Hey everyone, my name is Ryan and I am a Bible nerd. Welcome back to part two of the Crusades, which I'm calling the Battle for the Holy Land. If you haven't had a chance to listen or to watch the first one, there'll be some insight that might be helpful to kind of get you up to speed. But here's just kind of a recap of part one as far as the time frame, just so you know kind of what events led to where we're at, and so we can kind of continue to work through this idea of the Crusades. After the death of Muhammad, the rise of the Arab nations swept across the Eastern Mediterranean, including Syria and even into Egypt. And by 628 AD, Jerusalem had come under Muslim control. In 1095, the Eastern Orthodox Christians in the Byzantine Empire requested military aid from Rome from the west. So this was after the schism of 1054 that they requested aid as the Islamic faith and the Muslims and the Turks were starting to take over more and more of those regions. In response, Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade at the Council of Clermont, which began in 1096. So that's kind of where we got to in part one. If you want to watch that or update yourself on that, that'd be helpful. Just kind of know where we're at. But that's where we're starting here with part two, is what led to some of these other events. So first, I want to introduce you to Godfrey of Bouillon. He is one of the key leaders in this crusade movement, and there's about six other leaders that were involved in different stages of this, but he was really a key role to get all the way down to Jerusalem. On the video here, if you're listening to the podcast, I do have the video on my YouTube channel at Bible Nerd, and nerd again is with a 3 instead of an E, so N3RD. Hopefully, you'll be able to find it through that, or you can go to my website. You'll be able to find it from there as well. But all my stuff, Facebook, YouTube, website, is all under that Bible Nerd name. So the first picture here depicts Godfrey and his brothers meeting with the Byzantine Emperor Alexios, and Godfrey had either sold or mortgaged almost all of his estates and used the money to recruit an army of crusaders. Now, there's exaggerations and hyperbole of the count or how many that was able to raise, but there's as many as 8,000 mounted knights and 55,000 infantry that was assembled in Constantinople. Now you can see this raised some tension. You've got kind of the Roman Western Church and the Roman aid is coming to Constantinople. They've already been weakened by the Seljuk Turks. They've lost some territory. They've lost resources. That's why they had to reach out to the Western Empire. So he demanded an oath of loyalty, but they really didn't get that far. But they did make an agreement that they would return some of the lands back to Byzantine control once they conquered them, including Nicaea and Antioch, which were major cities not only for the pilgrims that were trying to get to Jerusalem, but also for history and just part of the original Byzantine Empire. If you look at a map and kind of where those cities are, they're very strategic on the Mediterranean, and they were really kind of a pathway to get down to Jerusalem. So the Byzantine force played a larger role in these decisive battles than the Crusaders did under Godfrey, but it did help build morale and support and really help them to kind of save their energy to make sure that they can get to their primary goal, which was Jerusalem. So here is another picture that depicts Godfrey and his brothers. It's a very famous photo, or not photo, I should say a drawing, very famous drawing artwork that kind of renders their siege of Jerusalem, which began in June of 1099. It lasted about 5 weeks, and the Crusaders faced fortifications, all kinds of tactical challenges, limited resources. They built these massive siege towers and employed all kinds of various techniques to breach the formidable walls that were around the city of Jerusalem. And the Crusaders also received word that a relief army was on its way, which increased the urgency to capture the city before the reinforcements could arrive. So, under this fervor, they really started to storm the city. And by July 15th of 1099, the Crusaders successfully stormed into Jerusalem. The capture was marked by intense and brutal violence against both Muslims and Jewish people as troops were unleashed upon the city, slaughtering its inhabitants indiscriminately. It didn't matter who it was. If they were in the way, they were likely to be killed or brutalized. Now, in the video here, you'll see a very famous painting that really is beautiful in the sense of all the stories that it tells. This painting was in 1847, And there's all kinds of different stories that come from that siege of Jerusalem that are all kind of put into one painting. As you hover over this painting and look at the different stories, it really is just an incredible part of church history, human history, and it's just the artwork and the attention to detail, all the strokes of all the different characters that are there, from Godfrey to other people that are here, the horses that are there. We really recommend it. If you haven't watched the video, or pull up this image, it's probably going to be the most common one that you'll pull up if you search like First Crusade or the Crusade of July 15th of 1099. It really is just it's beautiful in a way, and horrific in a way, just the story of it trying to be captured in this form of art. But it just really shows you all the different stories that would happen, and just in this particular art form. But it really was a moment that marked a pivotal and controversial part of Crusader history. You had the People's Crusade that were killing a lot of Jews before they even got into the Holy Land. Then you have the actual the indiscriminate killing of Jews, Muslims, whoever it was, within the city of Jerusalem. And it really does showcase the religious zeal that often veers into acts of violence and brutality that are justified by religious reasons. And it is something that we as Christians have to atone for and address. And really is something we've learned from, I think, as much as anything else. But the aftermath of the siege did establish a Latin kingdom of Jerusalem, with Godfrey being the proclaimed ruler. Now, he didn't want to be called king, and was quoted saying that he didn't want to wear a crown of gold where his savior wore a crown of thorns. He preferred the title that was translated into the advocate for the Holy Sepulchre. But you can just see the tension that was built up under these years, and from the 7th century up until 1099, that was under Muslim rule, and how the Muslims have also been mistreating the Christians at this point, and how all that religious tension finally blew up to the point where the city was just ravaged as they went through it. So let's talk a little bit about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Godfrey wanted to be called the advocate for that. So there's really some interesting history with this particular building, and why this is also another site that's so important to the Christian faith. So here is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in relation to the Dome of the Rock. And then there's a photo from the Holy Sepulchre down to the Dome of the Rock, just to get kind of an idea of the distance between these two. And the Holy Sepulchre is the site where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected. It's just west of the Temple Mount towards the north side. And on this next slide we have here is kind of an aerial Google photo of some of the other sites that are around that area. So you have the Dome of the Rock, where the old Temple Mount, where the Jewish temple was. You have the Garden of Gethsemane to the west. And then to the east, you've got the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It just is absolutely amazing that you've got three of the world's major religion, billions of people following these religious groups, all have major historical events that happened within these areas. Between the Jewish temple that was destroyed in 70 AD, to the mosque for the Muslim faith, to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus was crucified and buried, is all right there. It's just amazing that these physical places actually exist, and how much history is in this area. And I mentioned it a couple times. In June this summer, I'm planning on a trip to the Holy Land. I've got a really good friend that is retiring, and he works at the embassy there, has worked there for many years. And it's just something where it's really a once in a lifetime bucket list type thing. And I'm needing help raising funds to be able to go. It's going to be a financial burden on my family, me being gone that long, having to shut everything down to be gone. I really am trying to pull it off. And I don't think I can do it without financial help. So if you feel motivated or feel inclined, love to have you go to my website. You can donate, or any merchandise that you buy. I've got a merch store that has some fun things on there at BibleNerd.com. Any profits from that also go to raising funds for this particular trip. So check out BibleNerd.com for the content. If you want to help with donating, if you want to look at the merch and stuff like that. I don't have a huge profit margin on that stuff. It was just kind of more of fun. But whatever profit is made on that will go to help with this trip to Israel here in June. But that just gives you kind of an aerial map of the distance. It's just amazing how many events happen throughout human history at these sites. So here's a picture of the building itself. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was built in the 4th century under Constantine, but was destroyed in 1009. 1009 or just after that period. It was later allowed to be rebuilt in 1048. Now, modifications were made all the way up to 1757 when a status quo agreement was made with several Christian denominations that have quote unquote control over this site. The history of this site is well worth an entire video, and maybe I'll do that as part of my trip to Jerusalem, is really focus in on some of the history of just the building and things that have happened there. But this is a very important site for the Christian religion. So here's an interesting photo as well. Meet the immovable ladder. So you can see here on this picture, there's a ladder sitting there that has been there since 1757. Then you can see next to it a drawing that was around 1881 that also depicts this ladder. And why that's so significant is it ties into this status quo agreement that was made among the Christian denominations of this particular site. So the agreement stipulates that no movement, no repairs, no alterations to the church can be made without the consent of all six, possibly seven now, with Lutherans being kind of added to that. But really, there's six kind of main ones. Lutherans are a seventh. They all have to agree on all of it. And you can see how hard that's going to be to make any of those changes with the divisions and the differences. So it's just stayed there. This ladder has been there and depicted not only in a modern photo, but also an early drawing of this building that just shows how important it was to keep this place as free of alterations or any changes without consent of all the religious groups, which they obviously haven't come up with a lot of agreements since then. So here's kind of an outline of what's in the building. So you first have Golgotha's Rock or Calvary Rock. That's where the crucifixion happened. Then you can see the tomb is down off that way, and all the rock that was around the tomb has now been removed to build this building over the top of it. And what you'll see is kind of a building inside of that dome is where the actual tomb where Jesus was laid before his resurrection. So it kind of shows you where in relation these things are. And that was one thing that was always really surprising to me. In my mind, when I think of Golgotha, when I think of the crucifixion and the distance between that and where he was laid, I really thought it was further away, like two completely different sites. I don't know where that came in my mind, but to kind of see it as basically within one building. I mean, there's two domes on the top, but kind of within one building or one structure always really surprised me that those events happen so close to each other. And I know a lot of it has to do with the fact that Jesus passed away and they took him off and wanted to get him down before the Sabbath. And so they had to kind of get him into the tomb, but that's the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. So that was that close to where the crucifixion actually happened. But it's just an incredible sight. And I just can't imagine being able to stand at these places that just hold so much significance to human history. So that's kind of a breakdown of where the domes are in relation to where the events happen within the church. Now, here is the actual rock that is known as Calvary Rock, where the crucifixion actually happened. And you can see it's encased in kind of a glass container, and there's other relics and other things that are around it to kind of honor that particular tradition between the different denominations. But that's the actual traditional place where Jesus was crucified. I mean, just amazing. There's a chance to be able to go to this place to be able to see it. And all the Christians around the world that have had an opportunity to go to this place, all said as just an amazing experience. And then this is the actual kind of little mini building or small church within that bigger dome that actually has where the tomb is, where they laid him, and inside of that little kind of building within the building, if you will. So a very important space, a very important building, a very important part of Christian history, and such a focal point of a lot of the religious groups that really hold this place as a very special place within Christian history. And just amazing, again, that all of these things are within these distances for three major world religions. I mean, billions of people follow both all of these religions, and right here has these significant sites that all tie to those histories. So to have the chance to be able to go there is going to be amazing. I have had a few people tell me that it's not a very quiet place. Unfortunately, it is kind of a louder place as people chant and celebrate and other things depending on their denomination, especially probably around the Easter time frame. I remember watching a couple of videos and it's just like a madhouse of people trying to be there, carrying crosses, that type of thing during the Easter holiday. And so it'd be interesting to see it. So these photos with nobody there is probably pretty rare. because apparently it's a building that gets a lot of people through it. Like I think I saw like 4 million people go through this building every year, which is absolutely amazing. That many people are going. So I'll have an opportunity in June, hopefully, to be able to also experience this. I plan on doing a video, a podcast, maybe a few other things that really talk about this site, especially after going there. It's going to be just amazing for the opportunity to do that. So let's talk about a couple of the other crusades. There was 9 in total, including the second that was in 1147. So after they had conquered Jerusalem, they started to want to move out their territories and capture other cities. They started to go towards Damascus and had a disastrous retreat, and then they led to a third, which actually ended up having them lose the city of Jerusalem under the ruler or under the military work of Saladin. He's probably the next most important character within the Crusades for the Arab side of the conflict. He ended up taking back Jerusalem in 1187 and never did get it back. None of the other Crusades really ever took back Jerusalem under full Latin control. Now, there was other treaties made, there was other agreements that were made to allow pilgrims to actually attend and go to these holy sites under some of those conflicts. But Saladin was a big part of continuing Muslim control over most of that area, all the way up to other empires. I mean, all the way up to like the 1900s. I mean, it's just crazy how long that rule really made it, even though there's waves of other crusades that tried to go back down and conquer or take back Jerusalem. It seems like it's almost a focal point of every crusade that's kind of the rally cry, is to get back to Jerusalem and free it from non-Christian beliefs and be able to protect those holy areas, especially the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But it really never did. They never really did get any kind of full retain or control of that city. In fact, you even see the quarters now where you have Armenians and Muslims and Jewish and Christians all have kind of a quarter of that city is really kind of where their focal point is. And a lot of it is surrounding their holiest sites within those places. So the Wailing Wall, kind of the Western Wall, is that the Jewish side, the Dome of the Rock, that's all the Muslim quarter, and obviously the quarter that is where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is, the Christian area. But Saladin's very important to study as well. If you have time to kind of dig into this any further, definitely check out some of the history on Saladin. So about 15 years later, after the Third Crusade in 1202, the Fourth Crusade started. It was originally intended, again, to reclaim Jerusalem, but became incredibly more infamous for its diversion to Constantinople. The Crusaders were persuaded by the Venetians to get Alexandrios IV back in as the rightful emperor. In exchange for their military assistance, the emperor promised uh, additional support and resources and that type of thing. So the Crusaders besieged Constantinople in 1203. Now, this led to massive revolts and ended up being a full-scale assault on the city in 1204. But the capture of the city led to significant violence, unbelievable looting, and the really sad part of the Christian history, kind of Christian on Christian violence, was this desecration of holy sites, and is still widely regarded as the most disgraceful chapter in Crusader history, is this labeled as the Fourth Crusade. So you can see on the slide here, if you're watching the video, the different depictions of what happened during that particular time, and really just solidified even further the deeper divide between the Western Church in Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, and the Eastern Orthodox in Constantinople. There's already a lot of tension that was there even during that First Crusade, but this just really capped it off because of just the desecration of these holy sites within Constantinople and really the holy sites within Christian history. So it really is a dark part of Crusader history as we kind of research this and kind of learn about these Crusades. So I hope that was interesting. I hope that sparked some interest for you to look into this stuff on your own, dig into it a little bit deeper. And I just really found it something I didn't spend enough time on as far as previously. I didn't really know much about the Crusades, the dates, some of the things that led up to it. And a lot of it was spurred by my trip to the Holy Land. And I'm sure there'll be other things I can do with other videos here about the Crusades. But I just wanted to overview that a little bit and just maybe get you interested to search on some of these people, these places, these dates, some of these events that really happen within not only human history, but Christian history, and some of the dark moments where religious fervor did turn into some horrific treatment of Jews, of Muslims in those areas, and how there still is such a tension between these groups, and why these sites are so important. And again, not only human history, but religious history between Muslims, Jewish, and Christianity. So again, I hope you found that useful. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong, what interests you, any parts that are interesting. I love to have a dialogue with you. Love to talk to you about this stuff. But I just love nerding out on history, love nerding out on the Bible, Christianity. I'm all in on this stuff. And this site, this channel, just gives me a chance to nerd out even further. Maybe there'll be other opportunities that will open up with other podcasts. I'm teaching more at my church. I'm trying to get better at public speaking. I mean, all the things that this comes with. I mean, learning how to use Canva and video editing, all this stuff. But I just really enjoy nerding out on this stuff. And if you found this channel, maybe you do as well. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Hope this gets you reading your Bible. Hope it gets you reading Christian history. That's what this channel is all about. And hope to see you on the next video. Have a wonderful day.